Hello, this is Mike Klinetobe recording a YouTube video here on July 14th, 2026 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I would like to make the following statement after speaking with my son regarding his recent visit to Mooresville, North Carolina, to see his mother, Helen Klinetobe, who is terminally resting in a locked facility suffering from Alzheimer's. This is Mike Klinetobe in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I have a website called walverse.com. I also have a think tank called Walverse Think Tank, and you can go to walverse.com to see everything regarding the think tank. This statement concerns a specific amount of $162,000 that was and is still owed to my mother and her ensuing estate by Helen Klinetobe and Susan Emery. Susan Emery, who acted as power of attorney and executor for Helen Klinetobe since October 1st, 2018, along with the amount of $500,000 that is owed to Mike Klinetobe as Helen Klinetobe's care partner after Susan Emery declared herself durable medical power of attorney and executor when she should have taken over full care of her mother, Helen Klinetobe, on or about October 1, 2018, nearly 8 years ago. In addition, there is the matter of repayment of capital gains taxes for Helen Klinetobe's benefit that were paid by me, Mike Klinetobe, from 1994 to 2020, after Helen Klinetobe elected not to prepay taxes on capital gains. This repayment amount is in excess of $100,000. Also, there is the matter of Obamacare chargebacks in the amount of $20,000 that Mike Klinetobe paid out of his pocket to the IRS. Then there is the matter of Morgan Stanley investment account that I managed for Helen until Susan Emery stole it away from her mother in January 2021, approximately $600,000. These financial matters are closely tied to an ongoing conflict that subsequently resulted in the continuous harassment from Dan Klinetobe and his attorney, Steve Smith, against me, who went as far as reopening my mother's estate over an alleged $115,000. The situation had previously escalated when Brad Friesen, an attorney with Bell, Davis, and Pitt, sent a malicious and threatening letter to my mother in February 2023. Following the receipt of that letter, her health declined significantly, leading to her passing 8 months later in December of 2023. And just let me say that my mom was in perfect health up until February of 2023. And then when she received the letter, threatening letter from Brad Friesen and Bell, Davis, and Pitt, her health turned and declined and she passed away in December of 2023. Direct blame for this harassment and the subsequent reopening of the estate is placed entirely on Adam Emery, Helen's son. Susan Emery, Helen's daughter. Dana Emery, Helen's daughter-in-law. Lindsay Emery, Helen's daughter. Their attorneys, Craig Jenkins, Belle Davison Pitt, Dan Klinetobe, and Steve Smith. Steve Smith being Dan Klinetobe's attorney that he hired. Speaking of Steve Smith, that's a big question. Before I go into what Steve Smith tried to do, there's a review online right now. It's online right now. You can go look it up. A review on Steve Smith by a citizen named Melissa W. here in Winston-Salem. It goes like this. Be careful. This man, Steve Smith, is a thief. I gave him $370 as a deposit on an apartment that he was renting. And because he took too long getting it ready, I ended up stuck and having to stay at my old place. Then to top it off, he won't give me my deposit back. I have left him 20 plus messages over the past 2 weeks, and he refuses to call me back, probably because he knows he is in the wrong. I have never in my whole life done business with a more pompous person. I am 10 weeks pregnant and will more than likely, end up homeless because of his games. I absolutely do not recommend him. If he'll rip me off, trust me, he wouldn't think twice to do it to you. That's a review of Steve Smith, a supposed attorney here in Winston-Salem. So the question after that, left him 20 messages, 20 plus messages, and he never called back. This reminds me of Brad Friesen with Belle Davison Pitt. After he sent, and I'm talking about Brad Friesen from now on, after he sent a threatening letter to my mother in February of 2023, I called and sent emails and letters, including, this isn't a letter that I sent. This is the original letter that Brad Friesen, the threatening letter that he sent to my mother. Two-pager. I sent him a YouTube video with a copy of the letter. I showed it to him, and I said, this is no kind of letter to send to anybody, let alone my mother. And then sent that. Also sent email to him, sent letter, just to have him to return my call. And he never called me. Never called me. Later on, a couple years later, I would find out from another attorney that the strategy that they were trying to deploy was the do-nothing strategy, which is totally unethical and totally irresponsible, and especially the impact that the letter had against my mom and my family. So therefore, I was asking him to return my call and address my concerns. He never called, never contacted me in 2023, not in 2024, nothing in 2025, and not yet in 2026 as of today, July 14th, 2026, nothing. This is almost 40 months that Brad Friesen and Belle Davis and Pitt have not returned my call and my request and my, the concerns that I had with the letter and some other issues. 40 months, and I've been trying to contact him over the last 40 months, off and on, just every. Of course, it was a little more intense back in 2023, but I continue to contact him. So I don't know what to do with him. He and Belle Davis and Pitt have got to be the worst law firm, the worst attorneys in the history of. I was going to say Winston-Salem, but I got to go beyond that. They're terrible. They are absolutely terrible. So the whole thing really started with another attorney at Belle Davis and Pitt. Her name was Robin Stinson. She was hired by Susan Emery, Helen's daughter, to misrepresent her mother, Helen Klinetobe, against me. Total misrepresentation. I have all the documentation, I have everything memorialized. A total misrepresentation, a fraud. Orchestrated a separation from my wife, Helen Klinetobe, and confiscated all of her mother's money, all of Helen Klinetobe's money, and most of mine. All agreed to and prosecuted by Robin Stinson, a divorce lawyer with Belle Davis and Pitt. At one time during the negotiations with my attorneys, and my attorneys were with Blanco Tackerberry, a very fine law firm, and been for a long time here in Winston-Salem. But Robin Stinson maliciously and falsely accused me of being a, and I quote, violent maniac and drunk, unquote. She put that in writing to my attorney at Blanco Tackerberry. And, when my attorney discussed that with me, I guess my only reaction was that it sounds like something that's being made up by Susan Emery. She back in 2018, her and her brother Adam Emery decided to go after me, and they went after me by all means. And so when I discussed with my attorney that Helen Klinetobe had continually beaten me, punched me, threw objects at me, threatened my life with knives right here in the kitchen, our kitchen in Clemens West, Tangle Brook Trail. Abused me. Not just that last year we were together. No. After we were married in 1990, like 30 plus years prior. And it continued throughout. And that I had and still have multiple videos of the attacks made on me by an out of control, temper tantrum Helen Klinetobe, that she had that problem. And I did the best that I could do to deal with that and work through that, with Helen, but it persisted. And was never really talked about to anybody until now. My attorney asked me for the videos and the recordings. In deference to my wife and legacy, her legacy, I withheld providing those videos. Those attacks on me, physical attacks, mental as well, but mostly physical, punching, everything, they ceased the moment her daughter Susan Emery came over and picked her mother up for the last time on July 8th, 2021. Now it's about 5 years ago, and I was mentioning this to my son last week while he was in Mooresville visiting Helen, that I haven't been punched, I haven't been beaten up, I haven't been threatened with a knife, I haven't had objects thrown at me since July 8th, 2021. I don't really think about it that much, but when I do, I mean, my life has changed forever. And things have really been great for me ever since July 8th, 2021. But as you can tell, some of these issues remain and they just keep popping up. So I want to speak about an attorney that was referred to me. His name was Andy Fitzgerald. He was referred to me as somebody that could help me out on the reopening of my mother's estate by my brother. So I met with him, gave him a $3,000 retainer. He just never, I don't think he was interested. I don't even think he knew what he was doing. So the opposing attorney was Steve Smith, and he said that he's known Steve Smith for a long time. He has beers with him, meets with him all the time. Yeah, we can stretch this one out as long as you like. I don't want to stretch anything out. I wanted to get to the facts. I really hadn't done anything wrong, and I don't know why my brother was wanting to reopen my mom's estate. But anyway, that was all shut down because my sister Carol was the executor, and anyway, the Superior Court questioner wanted to know, did she want to drop out as executor, and because she didn't handle it right. No, she had an affidavit. She wrote back and said, no, I did everything the way I was supposed to do, which that should have just shut down the case, or the reopening of the will. But no, Andy Fitzgerald. Let me first start off by saying, in March 2026, this is Andy Fitzgerald. I've just known this guy for like a couple weeks. He's supposed to be a good attorney. No. And he comes back to me and he just says, you're just giving me too much information. And I did give him a lot of backup, because I've been litigating some of this stuff over the last 2 years. And there's still some open issues open there. Anyway, Andy Fitzgerald, this guy that I just known for a couple weeks, finally in March, he says, he called me crazy and a drunk. Not over the phone or in person. Now, this is in an email. I've got the email, and quote unquote, almost verbatim of what Robin Stenson said back in 2021 or 2022 when we were negotiating, and she called me a violent maniac, crazy, and a drunk back in 2022. Yeah, to my attorney. And but anyway, so this Andy Fitzgerald, he says almost the same thing. This is while he's resigning, he's bailing. Apparently he can't handle it. Resigning his representation of me in the matter. And there was a false demand made by Steve Smith and a letter signed by Steve Smith while he was representing Dan Klinetobe, my brother. After his continued harassment in 2025, until I called the FBI on my brother, Dan Klinetobe, and they did whatever the kind of investigation. I then subsequently had to hire an attorney out in Southern California, out in Orange County, to write a letter to Dan Klinetobe to say cease and desist. But he continued to proceed and hired an attorney. As it turns out, hired a very bad attorney. So, yeah, here's the letter from Steve Smith, and it says in regards resolution of dispute involving estate of Sally Klinetobe. Dear Mr. Klinetobe, and this was on February 3rd, 2026, just a few months back here this year. And some things like in here, we've been retained by Dan Klinetobe, understanding that at the time of Mrs. Klinetobe's passing, you owed approximately $115,000. No, false. Based on my review of the file, siblings repaid the money. No, false. The situation gives ground to the estate being reopened. False. So our client is requesting the following as a settlement to this matter. Payment of $28,750 in the portion of the estate our client would inherit if monies you owe are repaid. False. Payment of $11,250, which is the approximate amount our client paid in rent, which I have been told by you agreed to pay when our client was tending to Sally Klinetobe prior to it. False. My brother never tended to my mother while she was ailing in that last year of 2023. False. And then to try to recollect some rent, obscene. Number 3, payment of $8,056, which are the legal fees incurred by our client in this matter. Are you kidding me? $8,000. And then finally, to top it all off, number 4, an exchange of 2 pieces of jewelry that belong to your family, with your client giving you your grandfather's ring in return for a bracelet you inherited. That grandfather's ring is my ring that was given to me by my grandfather, Hugh Schmidt, back in 1980. And on a visit one time that Dan had back to North Carolina, he stole the ring. He now has the ring, and now he wants to exchange it for, I would say, somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 worth of jewelry. Oh my God. Anyway, if you're willing to settle this matter, please contact him. No. Okay. Well, so this was my response, because my attorney at the time, Andy Fitzgerald, he's the one that sent the letter to me. I don't know how in the hell he got a hold of it, unless there was some hanky-panky going on, which I'm not certain of. I'm gonna check it out. I'm not gonna let that one go. But you can see all my red highlights here on page 1 of that letter that I just read, summarized. Here's page 2. And when I sent this back to Andy Fitzgerald, he said, "No, you're making too much out. Just pay it. No." And then he resigned. He bailed on me. Sent a letter over, officially resigning and everything. But what a mess. And I bring these attorneys up here because it's Craig Jenkins, it's Bell Davis and Pitt, it's this Fitzgerald Law Group, Andy Fitzgerald, Steve Smith Law Group. That's 4 of them. I don't know how many more are out there in Winston-Salem that are like these guys. Anyway, I'm going to the American Bar Association. I'm going to go to this North Carolina bar and here in Forsyth County, and I'm going to, probably provide all this information to them and let them, decide what they want to do with them. But if you're somebody that's viewing this, and if you're thinking about hiring an attorney in the Winston-Salem area, stay away from these people. Stay totally away from them. Let's see, finally, this is the original letter that my mom sent to Helen Klinetobe asking for the $162,000 that she owed. And that's, the only, no response from Helen or Susan. No, they went to an attorney. They went to this Brad Friesen, and he's the one that, rifled back the threatening letter. So I've got a lot of other, like a backup and so forth, and I could go on, but, we're approaching 28 minutes here of this YouTube video. And if you're still watching, thanks, appreciate it. But I guess in conclusion, I want this YouTube to memorialize just a few, just like a small couple percent of the total of problems that have been going on over the last 8 years, and how it's affected me, my family, my son in particular. My son, I think, has really been impacted by this because he's being pulled in different directions. And he really cares about his mother, Helen Klinetobe. And that's why he made a trip with his family to Mooresville last week for 4 or 5 days to visit with Helen. And he told me that she's not doing too good. She can speak very few words. She lost control of her writing ability back in 2019, I think it was. And then she lost a lot of other control as far as movement around the house, and then some of the other things that sort of declined. But my son, Patrick, he still loves his mother. He visits her at least once or twice a year in person. He said it was really rough this time on his wife, Elizabeth, and their 2 boys. And their 2 boys, I think, probably have thousands of questions. And Patrick's going to try to get around to those. I suggested to Patrick maybe the next time, maybe in 6 months or so, that when he goes to visit Helen, visit her by yourself. Just by yourself, nobody else. No other contact with, Adam or Susan or anybody else. Just go there by yourself and spend time with her. And just remember the great times that we had. Starting in 1990, when we got married and we brought the families together, we had a lot of great years. And Helen was a champion. She still is a champion. Take care. I'm sure there will be some follow-up from this. And anybody can call me at any time. Thank you.